Why don't we see, because again, I want to try to bring in some of these different clips that are coming from the various residents and citizens here in the Detroit area. Let's bring in the clip from Paige Hansen, who is a student from Plymouth.
I think Lincoln has a very positive legacy. I think sometimes that he's almost glorified to the point of deification, and that's not necessarily a good thing. He was a normal man with his own problems and flaws, but the fact that he has such a positive legacy and what has reached us, I think, is in part because he was a strong, vibrant leader in the office of the president. We have presidents that we don't really remember because they weren't a strong force, but him we remember, and we tend to remember only the good things. That is inspiring for today, because not only can you be a strong leader and do through good deeds, but also by just being a positive force and a face for a movement or a people.
And if I could ask if we could cue one more up and speak to both of these clips. This is from Zahia Kachib, who is a Lebanese student here in the Dearborn area.
I believe that Lincoln's legacy left a lot of roots, which helped us kind of grow and give us opportunities such as freedom, liberty. Kind of, we felt that as my parents felt as if they came here, that more privileges that they had, perhaps they can overcome them. A lot of things that Abraham Lincoln has done, he overcame a lot of obstacles, and I think that perhaps instills a lot of hope for a lot of Arab Americans living in the community, especially nowadays. Instills a lot of hope that we can perhaps too overcome these obstacles.
There's something that's very powerful in that second clip, and I think it reinforces something that comes through in Paige Hansen's contribution, which is clearly there's something incredibly inspiring about Lincoln. What is it? One of the things really is embodied in that great line that comes from the Gettysburg Address, that in many ways this is a country that at its best is about the capacity to enjoy a new birth of freedom. And a new birth of freedom not only for the country, but the ways in which individuals who find their way to this country feel a sense that there is a possibility of something greater than what they see around them. And I'm, again, thinking about our difficult times today, our challenging times today, and at the same time, the power of ordinary citizens like Rosa Parks, like Abraham Lincoln, to make a difference, to create opportunities where they weren't there before. Particularly in terms of thinking about the country that we live in today. A country that in some ways, I think, Lincoln at times had glimmers that we would become. Multiracial, multinational, made up of immigrants as well as of individuals that were multi-generation residents of this area. And also a country that had developed so fully in terms of its infrastructure, from railroads to universities to the emergence of modern industry. How do we think about that new birth of freedom today? What are the things that we should point to individuals who feel frustrated about their situation, to say that there's hope in terms of being involved in these projects, this work, these grand designs to make this country better?
I think we need to stop thinking of America in petitions. America is a accumulation of religious insight and activity and experience. We were founded in New England, essentially religious reasons. The first thing they did was start universities, and so the great universities came out of these pilgrims. They wrote the Constitution of Massachusetts and established democracy. And out of that, according to Max Weber and others, the accumulation of virtue and hard work created the wealth that caused capitalism. He neglects the 4.5 million slaves that were working during that time to create that wealth. But we look at America, we've got to see us functioning on all of these levels simultaneously for us to be succeeding. And it's like the Portuguese thing that they say in Africa, a luta continua, the struggle continues. And Barack Obama has this struggle really, I mean, he jumped into it and volunteered for it, but he's got all of the unfinished business of Lincoln and Roosevelt, you know, piled into his presidency.
We mentioned at the top of the program that we were going to have 3 satellite town halls that would take place in conjunction with this town hall at the Ford Museum. The first of these is at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History in Detroit. It's being moderated by Marty Hershock, professor of history at the University of Michigan in Dearborn.
Thank you, Adam. Good evening.
The folks at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History tonight were treated to a very interesting and far-ranging consideration of Abraham Lincoln's legacy as shaped by and reflected through the African American experience. Highlights of the evening included an inspiring 2-person play based on a dialogue between John Brown and Frederick Douglass, elucidating some of the major issues confronting Lincoln and the nation on the eve of his presidency, and a rich discussion highlighting Lincoln's pragmatism and flexibility in reacting to the actions and advice of a wide array of African Americans. That was all followed up with a lively question and answer session. All in all, it was a very illuminating and rewarding evening for all.
Another of the satellite town halls that are taking place tonight is over at the Plymouth Historical Museum in Plymouth, Michigan. Tom Costello, President and CEO of the Michigan Roundtable for Diversity and Inclusion.
I'm here today with the Executive Director of the Detroit branch, N.A.A.C.P, Hester Wheeler. We are here at the Plymouth Historical Museum. We wish to thank our host, Elizabeth Kelly Kirstens. We had a diverse crowd ranging from high school students to ministers and people of faith.
But I thought the overall conversation was outstanding. We know that when people talk well together, we learn to work well together.
If someone would just pass on that message of, like, you just have to persevere and you have to think that you can do it. You don't have to say, like, hey, I can't do that because of where I'm from and where my roots are. Like, people need role models like that, and I think Abraham Lincoln is one of, like, the best ones because of what he was able to accomplish.
Hester, I thought tonight was transformational. I thought we brought a number of people together from different communities, and I think they left here feeling that they had something to take back to their community.
And actually, I agree with you, Tom. I think that many times when we talk about race issues, people are looking for direction. The bottom line that flowed out of this particular discussion was that we need to be bold, we need to marginalize people who racialize, and we need to take decisive action. So I agree, Tom.
Now let's return to the Henry Ford.
There's a satellite meeting taking place now at the Arab American National Museum in Dearborn. Warren David, president of Arab Detroit, is moderating that session.
Thank you, Adam. You know, about 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, Arab Americans immigrated here to this country, and they came here because of freedom, and they wanted to have the freedoms that they did not have in their homeland. And because of the Lincoln legacy, we learned tonight that that freedom was made possible. We also heard about the civil rights movement, and the civil rights movement in this country was basically inspired by the Lincoln legacy. And the term Arab American, Afro-American, was a result of the civil rights movement. And lastly, we learned a little bit about the youth of our city here in Detroit, African American youth, Arab American youth, and how they've been inspired and motivated by the Lincoln legacy. It was just a really great event. Back to you, Adam.